Hey guys, I'm Torie, and you're listening to That Girl, the podcast. Grab a beverage of choice and settle in because the new episode is starting now. Hey guys, what is up? It's your girl, Torie, and I am back with a whole new podcast episode. Today's episode, I am really excited for. I know that I say I'm excited for every episode, but there's like some here and there that I get truly incredibly hyped for, and this is one of those. And I'm sure you guys are like, well, why? Tell us. So there's this new trend going around. It's called the lucky girl syndrome, or just lucky girl syndrome. And I've seen it like in this past week a lot, and it's just popped up everywhere, all over TikTok. Podcasts are talking about it. It's on Instagram, and it's just seemed to have come out of nowhere. And so I was like curious about it, and I decided to kind of do a deep dive, talk to you guys about what it is, pros and cons of it, and how to use it. So that is what we're going to be talking about today. I had so much fun doing research for this. I love researching this type of content, like the whole idea of having a certain lifestyle slash manifesting slash the science behind it. So I'm really excited to dive into all of those things, and I just think it's gonna be a good time. So if you want to know what lucky girl syndrome is and how to use it, keep listening. So before we jump in, of course, we have to do life updates. Who would I be if I wasn't a podcaster who included my life updates? So a little 10-second life update for you. I've mainly just been working. Still need to take down my Christmas decorations. We didn't get our tree up till really late. I know I talked about that on podcast, so Josh still wants to keep it up for a little bit longer, so I'm trying to like be nice to him, but at the same time my OCD is like itching to get it down, so we'll see how much longer that stays up. I'm still just trying to figure out the new skincare that I told you guys about, the one that Miranda Care owns. And I'm still in that phase where it's like giving me more acne because it's pulling it out before my face gets like clear. So I'm not having the time of my life right now. In fact, it's more of the opposite. I'm not thriving, and I'm kind of sad about it. You know, self-confidence is kind of low. As I talked about, I haven't had acne in a really long time because of the medication I was on. So sad, RIP. But I'm really hoping it goes away and then my face is super clear. So little update there. I'll let you know when, if all of this goes away, which it will because wishful thinking. Last little update. I am shocked at how many of you said that Sunday was the last day of the week, because I honestly thought that everyone kind of agreed that Sunday was the first day of the week. But no, my sister even voted that it was the last day of the week. We grew up in the same house. Like, where have I been? And some of you did say first day, and guys, first day gang, I see you. But I was just, I don't know, I expected everyone, like the majority, to say first day, and most people said last day. So wow, I'm learning something new. I don't know, obviously it doesn't matter, like it's cyclical, so it's gonna start over no matter when it starts, but wow, the more you know, it genuinely shocked me. So yeah, that's pretty much all I got for life updates. Before I jump in, don't forget to follow / subscribe on whatever platform you are on. While you're at it, if you want to follow me on Instagram and TikTok, my handle is @thatgirlthepod, and I post all kinds of fun content, and we have a fun community of girlies who are all working to become the best version of ourselves, and we would love to have you. All right, so with that being said, let's jump on in. This is one of those episodes where I have quite a few resources, so I will have all of the resources that I listed. I'll try to remember to mention all of them and give them credit, but either way, they'll all be listed down below if you want to check them out for yourself. So, like I mentioned, this is a new trend called Lucky Girl Syndrome. I didn't see it until this week, which you may have seen it sooner or earlier, but I feel like it kind of blew up this past week or so. It's really similar to trends like that girl, clean girl, hot girl summer, and just like these words, like phrases that people coin that are start on TikTok and then turn into like a worldwide trend. So according to sheknows.com, it was started by a TikToker named Laura Glebe in December 17th to be exact. And she claimed that it is a state of mind. So Glamour magazine gave a definition of lucky girl syndrome. Pretty much all of these did, and it was very similar, but they said that it's someone who believes that luck is genuinely on their side. So they believe without a shadow of a doubt that everything is going their way and they are the luckiest person ever. Luck is just on their side. So Laura, the one who created this, said that it's a state of mind and it is okay to be delusionally, is that a word, delusionally? It's okay to be delusional that you are the luckiest person, and just just take it all the way there and like genuinely believe, and like you can even tell people you are the luckiest person. Don't get like completely scared off. Like, I have science behind this, I have manifestation, so don't be like delusional. What? I'm out, because I have all the tea for you, but you got to stick around and hear me out. So according to this pro manifestation / success coach named Kathleen Cameron, this lucky girl syndrome point of view produces results because it actually taps into the power of your subconscious beliefs. And if you don't know, your subconscious is extremely powerful. When you're driving down the road and you are thinking about that one thing you said 5 years ago, yet you still get home and you don't remember like driving and turning and things like that, that was your subconscious. So that's the best example I have for it. Like, when you mindlessly do things, your subconscious is basically anything that you imprint on your subconscious is what it knows. It doesn't have eyes, it doesn't have the ability to like see things, so it only knows what you tell it, basically. Back to Glamour magazine. Basically, they dive into it and say it's a form of manifestation, which I agree with. I think all of the resources agreed, and more specifically, it is adopting the law of assumption, which is similar to the law of attraction. However, the law of assumption states that whatever you assume to be true is true. So I have actually done a lot of research on the law of assumption. I found it really interesting, and I did practice it for a while. I still try to, but I think it can get really toxic, which I'll jump into in a little bit, and that is why I'm really careful about it. But I'll give you all the warnings and the tea in a second, like I mentioned. Basically, like, if you assume you're the luckiest person on the planet, you are, according to the law of assumption. Whatever you believe to be true is true. If you believe you're rich, you're rich. If you believe you're beautiful, everyone thinks you're beautiful. Because according to the law of assumption, everything that you 100% assume to be true and your subconscious is like, yep, that's true, is a fact. And it will become true in the world. Which makes sense to a certain extent, because like, when you think about energy, like attracts like, the energy you give off is the energy you're gonna get. So I can kind of see the law of assumption doing that. I have a whole video called, I think it's called The Science Behind Manifestation, the Law of Attraction, where I break this down. It's one of my older episodes, but you can definitely find it. But I'm not really gonna go into the science of manifestation specifically. I talk about it a little bit more in a second, but I'm really gonna focus on the lucky girl syndrome side of manifestation rather than all the different aspects. So that's like a little breakdown on law of assumption. However, Glamour magazine does want to talk about the negatives, and this is kind of going to bring me into the negative side of it in general. But the first thing that they mention is toxic positivity. So if you don't know what toxic positivity is, it's the belief that no matter how dire or difficult a situation is, people should maintain a positive mindset. So no matter how bad your life is, people who have toxic positivity are like, they don't allow themselves to get upset. They don't allow themselves to be negative, which is just taking it too far. Like, they don't let themselves feel emotions. They don't let themselves be sad. They don't let them properly, what's the word I'm looking for? They don't properly like digest and handle grief, because they just push it off and say that they have to be positive. And while I understand like that and wanting to be positive all the time, obviously you have to process grief and trauma and things like that, because as I've talked about many times, if you just throw it into a closet, it's gonna come back out and back out and back out, and it's gonna affect you more and more until you fix it. So that is actually one of the critiques of law of assumption, as well as spirituality in general. It kind of goes into toxic spirituality, which I tried to find a definition on and I couldn't, because apparently there's all different kinds of definitions for toxic spirituality. There's not like one set one. Everyone has something to say about it and how it's negative. If you just type in toxic spirituality definition on Google, you're gonna get 1,000 different things. But the general consensus, and basically what it's critiqued for, is that people are not facing reality and they're trying to use spirituality to fix their problems. And it also goes into toxic positivity. So like I mentioned, it can get really negative. I definitely can see where the law of assumption can get too far. Like, I had that issue where I was just constantly saying, I'm fine, I'm perfect, I'm beautiful, and I was not fine. I was actually really upset about things. I wouldn't process things. I just didn't want to face the facts. And there's also this whole other side of it, which ties into toxic spirituality, where people will feel guilty for not being positive, which toxic positivity actually, but say that something bad happens in their life, they will feel guilty about it because they will think that they manifested it by not being positive enough, or not assuming that their life is good enough. Like, they didn't assume that they're the luckiest person, everything good happens to them, and so they got in a car accident and it's all their fault. So that is where toxic spirituality comes in, and I can definitely see that side of it. I was feeling that way because I would feel guilty for having anything bad happen to me, and that's kind of why I was saying you have to be careful with law of assumption. It's definitely something that you have to like know. I don't even know how to explain it. You have to understand that if bad things happen to you, it's not your fault, and you just need to be really aware of your feelings, your emotions, while still practicing it. And it can get really difficult, but yeah, I think that this is definitely law of assumption, and much like any other trend, it's something that's been around for a long time that people have put a new shiny name on, and so everyone's excited about it. And it's really cool to see it get past like manifestation talk and get onto like mainstream. But like I mentioned, there still are a few more negatives I want to talk about before I get into how to do it and like the positives of it and how fun and exciting it can be. The girl who actually, one more thing about toxic positivity, I forgot to mention this. Laura, the girl who actually created it, in the video, she said that some people accuse her of toxic positivity whenever she talks about this. And she said that it's not toxic positivity because she genuinely feels this way and she's genuinely being positive, which is true. Like, if you're not feeling guilty about being positive because you're upset, like, then you can't have toxic positive. Like, she is positive to the point that like she's genuinely being positive and genuinely thinks she's the luckiest. So that is true. I think though there's still that toxic level of pushing it onto others and saying you have to be positive all the time as well that becomes problematic, and that is what I'm going to talk about next. So Glamour magazine really talks about this when they call out the trend for really just benefiting privileged people and having privileged people kind of say to less privileged or people who may not have been raised in the same circumstances or have the same means, and telling them like the reason that you're not privileged or the reason that you don't have all these amazing things is because you don't think that you're lucky, when they didn't have a fair advantage, you know. Like, say that someone who is rich is of a race that is more celebrated, Caucasian honestly, and they are given a free education or things like that. Like, they just have this head start on the world and they were born into millions of dollars, things like that. It's going to be a lot easier for them to have lucky circumstances happening to them because it's just like a part of their lifestyle, if that makes sense. Like, their dad buying them a new Lamborghini is gonna be more likely than for someone who grew up with like middle income parents, had to work really hard in school to get a college grade. Like, they still work really hard. You know where I'm going with this? My brain kind of hurts from work, so if I say something that you're just like, what the heck, I hope you catch my gist. This is like a hard topic to talk about, so I don't want to say something wrong. And my ADHD has also been off the walls for 3 days. I think it's because I'm stressed because I had some personal family issues going on, but they're better now. Not to change the subject, but yeah, my ADHD has just been crazy and I can't form sentences or like think a coherent thought. So I'm really trying my best here. If I say something not as like 100% as I could have, I really apologize, and I don't mean to like offend anyone or say something wrong. It's just like my brain does not work, honestly. Along with this idea of like toxic spirituality, the person who really talks about this the most, her name is Melody Walker. I linked her TikTok down below. I also linked the specific TikTok with Laura where she brings up Lucky Girl Syndrome for the first time down below. But Melody has 48.6 thousand followers on TikTok, and this specific video had 3,707,000 views when this article that spoke about it was written, the Glamour magazine one. She just basically talks about how you feel like everything is your fault, and it's just promoting this really negative, toxic ideology. So You know, I talked about that, and I think that as long as you are aware of that and you know that that's an issue, that you kind of do it at your own risk, and if you start to feel that way, know that it's not your fault. I promise you. Like, I promise you. Just don't, I guess, like, don't get too deep into it. Like, it's okay to be positive and say, I am the luckiest person in the world, and like do harmless things like that. But when you get so caught up in it and so obsessed with it, that was my problem, is I was so obsessed that every little thing that happened I was questioning, and you just can't take it that seriously. Like, it's not meant to be like that, basically. So I don't think it's meant to be like that. I think it's harmless if it's kept at a base level and not like too deep, pretty much, when it comes to toxic spirituality. What I determined, what my opinion is yes, there are negatives to this trend. You know, it has been called out for having roots that are ableist, racist, sexist, all those things, because it calls into question the beginnings or the privileges of the people who are preaching about this syndrome, so to speak, what their roots are. But I think that it's just like a really thin line. Obviously, I'm not justifying them, and I do think that these are real issues. However, I think that if you are being positive, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, if you just want to have a positive outlook on life, that's not a bad thing. It's just you need to be aware about how you are mentoring others, and it's when you're mentoring others, basically. Like, there's nothing wrong with assuming that you are a lucky person, but it's when you don't acknowledge your own privilege while you're assuming you're a lucky person, and you tell the less fortunate that they need to feel luckier. Did I word that right? Like, so basically, it's okay to assume that you're the luckiest person, but when you turn around and say, hey, the reason that you're like this is because you just need to feel luckier, and you don't even say, like, actually, I have a trust fund or things like that, that's when the problem arises. Other than that, like, obviously there's nothing wrong with being positive. There's nothing wrong with being lucky. There's nothing wrong with assuming you're lucky, and I think that that's actually a great mindset to have, as long as you don't take it too far, like I mentioned before. Now that I've talked about the negatives, I do want to talk about the science behind it. So I mentioned this in my manifestation episode that I mentioned a while back, like the one that I did not that long ago. But I'm going to read this. It's from imindspirit.com. I'm going to read it word for word because I'm not that good when it comes to neuroscience, and I don't want to say something wrong. So, we all have this thing called the reticular activating system, RAS for short. We're bombarded with information all day, every day, so the RAS filters out unnecessary information so that your brain can focus on what's important to you. When you believe that you're a lucky girl, your brain starts to look for signals to prove yourself that you're lucky. That means it will continuously guide you to evidence that this is a possibility. So this is basically that belief slash theory, I don't know if it's been made a fact, that if you're looking for something specific in everyday life, you're gonna see more of it. Like, if you are specifically looking for a red balloon and it's on your mind to see a red balloon, you're gonna see a red balloon. Whereas if you are not focusing on that, you may see one, but you're not gonna notice it because you are seeing so many things at once, so much information is being thrown at you as a human being that your brain has to filter out what is important to you and what's not important to you. So, you know, that idea that if you're positive, you're gonna see the positives in life, and if you're negative, you're gonna see the negatives in life. It's exactly like that. They also mention in that same article that it takes around 30 days for your brain to create new neural pathways. So if you do decide to practice this, give yourself about a month, because basically the way I understand it is what neural pathways are is they are little neurons, little pathways going through your brain, and when you start to do something, a new pathway is built. So if you want to think more positively and you start thinking more positively, then neural pathways that are built on positive thinking and that are basically looking out for positives in your life are being built. And it takes about 30 days for those to be built. So if you are starting to think like I'm the luckiest person ever, those neural pathways that support that and are going to look for things that make you the luckiest person ever, or that like call out things that do make you lucky, little things, big things, all the things in between. It's gonna take about 30 days for that to be completely built. Does that mean it's gonna take 30 days for you to see something? No. Obviously people have seen things in like a day, they've seen things in like an hour, but it is gonna take more time. On that same note, I do wanna talk about some of the TikToks I've seen. One of these articles, I don't remember which one specifically, talked about how they looked through the lucky girl syndrome keywords on TikTok. They just typed it in, and most of the creators that they saw were young white women, and that was their supporting basis for the privilege concept. While I think that does play a factor, they did acknowledge that like you don't know someone's socioeconomic background based on a video of them, which I agree with. I don't ever want to assume someone's socioeconomic background, especially like race and things like that. Like my boyfriend and I are both Latinos, and I'm not saying that we had it hard or anything like that, but it definitely played a role in how we grew up, how people have treated us when they find out like my last name specifically. If people just see my name on a piece of paper, they look at me a lot differently, and then when they meet me, they're like, wait a minute, you're the same person? Like, why do you have that last name? And it's because I don't look very Hispanic. So since I have been raised like this and I know what it feels like for people to assume you're a race that you're not, I never want to assume that of someone else. However, they did mention that a lot of these appeared to be young white women. But when I looked through the TikTok myself, while most of them were female, they were a lot of different ethnicities. So it was good to see people of all different nationalities, different ethnicities, talking about this lucky girl syndrome and how it's impacted them, the positives, the negatives. There were some men in there as well, but you know, like I said, most of them appear to be female. But I also don't know how much of TikTok was filtering out what I typically watch, because I do typically watch women of all nationalities, just because that's who typically makes manifestation TikToks, that girl TikToks, the things that I am specifically interested in. So I don't know if that played a role. Why don't you go and try it out and let me know what yours looks like, because I'm curious to know how much of the algorithm played a role in that. But for me, like I mentioned, I did see a ton of different ethnicities, so I don't know when they looked. This article is literally from this morning, so don't know what's going on there. But I do want to still mention that, and that privilege is a thing and it's something to be mindful of. And if you are talking about lucky girl syndrome, remember not to push it on people and kind of make them feel bad about their circumstances, because even if you don't specifically say, oh, it's because you're not lucky enough, like you're just not thinking positively enough, they may hear it that way. Like people hear things differently. You could just say like, yeah, I just was feeling a certain way and now I feel luckier, and people could take it differently. So be very careful about how you say that, because in this day and age, it is something to be mindful of, I guess. Again, if I worded that wrong, I'm so sorry. I'm really trying here. Brain is just not working. So now that I've talked about the pros, the cons, giving you the lowdown, giving you the names on everyone involved in this lucky girl syndrome, I want to tell you a couple success stories and how to use it. So when I first heard about lucky girl syndrome, it was on the What We Said podcast, and it was because JC and Chelsea, their whole podcast episode was called Lucky Girl Syndrome, and I thought it was like something they had just made up that was like a cute, funny thing, and then I dove more into it and they talked about who was on TikTok. Well, what kind of started it is Chelsea was in New York City for Christmas, and she literally basically had this crazy story of how she stumbled across like $1,000 earrings. And she said that it kind of just shifted her focus, and she decided this was going to be her lucky girl year. She's an Aries, her husband is a Taurus, and this year is the year of the Aries and the Taurus, which I am personally very excited about because I'm a Taurus, my best friend's an Aries, my boyfriend is a Taurus, and my best friend's fiance is a Taurus. So like gang up in here, like I am so excited. So I already kind of knew about that, but when she mentioned that, she said like, this is just my lucky girl era, I can just feel it, and it got me really interested. And then I saw it a couple more times on Instagram. So that was her big story that kind of got the ball rolling. Well, then when I was going through the TikTok to see who was talking about it, what were they talking about. There were a few different stories, and I'm not going to tell you every single one. You can go do the research and spend some time doing that, but basically it ranged from a pair of shoes someone wanted just showing up on the shelf at TJ Maxx when they just weren't supposed to be there, to a restaurant a couple of girls were going to that's usually closed at that time being open, to someone literally changing their financial outlook on life, getting a massive income boost, and getting their dream apartment within a year. So while lucky girl syndrome hasn't been around that long, like I mentioned, abundance mindset and law of assumption have been around for a long time, so that's why there's already a few stories about it. But lucky girl syndrome, the name, has not been around that long, so definitely check those stories out. I'm personally going to try this for the next month and see how it changes. I may forget because, you know, I hyperfixate on things and then forget about them, but I will let you know in a month from now. Remind me and I'll let you know how things have changed. And if you decide to do it, let me know and we can kind of like hype each other up and do it together and see what happens. That would be so cool if we did it together. Guys, please DM me on Instagram. I'm gonna post, obviously I'll post something, and comment on my most recent post if you want to do this with me and try the lucky girl syndrome idea out together. So now that all that is out of the way, let's talk about how to use it, the fun stuff. So the first thing you have to do when you are manifesting, because I'm no stranger to manifesting, I do believe in manifesting, the first thing you have to do is kind of get in touch with yourself. You need to focus on what you really want, who you want to be, and just get to know yourself. It's really hard to manifest if you're not in touch with yourself. I disassociate really bad. It's just a symptom of like all my mental stuff I have going on. And so it's really hard for me to be aligned with myself. And I just constantly feel like I'm not myself, if that makes sense. And I've found that I can't manifest when I am in that state. So you definitely need to be in touch with yourself. Once you have a clear idea of what you really want and who you want to be, then it's time for the acts, to put it into action. So for this specific example, you want to be the lucky girl. You want to be the luckiest girl out there. So you're going to do affirmations. For your affirmations, you're going to say, I am so lucky. I'm such a lucky girl. Everything works out for me. Nothing but luck flows into my life. I am full of abundance. Only abundance flows into my life. My life is full of positivity, love, and light. Anything like that, you can choose emotion or affirmations. It's really important actually to choose affirmations that are written in a way that you speak. So for me, I speak I'm very sarcastic and I'm not super formal in the way that I talk to myself. So for me, it may be like, damn, I'm so lucky. And so all day I'll just be like, damn, I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky. But for you, it may be like, I'm the luckiest woman out there. And that's totally fine. We may not have the exact same affirmations. It's just your brain registers it quicker and puts it into your subconscious way quicker when it's in a language that your brain understands. Like if you're talking super formal, your brain's gonna be like, who is this woman? You might as well be talking in Spanish. Your brain is not gonna know what's going on. It's gonna figure it out and it knows what it means, but it's coming from a foreign place. So in addition to doing affirmations, you can visualize. You can do this in a few different ways. You can do vision boards, which y'all know I'm a sucker for a good vision board. Oh, I have any excuse to make a vision board, I'm there. You can also visualize, which is literally daydreaming. You just take some time. I like to meditate for 2 to 3 minutes and just clear my head, make sure that I'm not thinking of anything that can get in the way. There's not any thoughts that are just gonna like impose. I like to light a candle, make sure the room is quiet and nothing's gonna distract me. And obviously it doesn't have to be this formal. You can do it in your desk at work. Anywhere you can daydream, you can do it. But for me personally, because I get distracted so easily, and I also like the ritual of it because it's a form of self-care for me, that's why I go to this extreme. So then you just daydream about situations where you are lucky. Say you want to get a promotion at work. Visualize yourself getting that promotion. It's really that easy, and just do that. There's this thing called SATs, and it goes along with the law of assumption, but it's when your brain is like half asleep already. It's in a different state, like a different wavelength. Ooh, someone Instagrammed me. I don't know why it went off. Oh, it's because it was on my iPad, not my phone. I was so confused. My phone was on silent. But it's when your brain is like half asleep, so your subconscious is way more impressionable. And so you are visualizing as you go to bed. So basically just like daydreaming as you drift off to sleep, which most people, I feel like I do that already. So you're basically just doing that. Another way to visualize is scripting, which is when you write out the thing you want to happen. So some people will just write their affirmations over and over, which works for them. I do that sometimes if I'm having a hard time focusing. I will just write it out. But visualizing through scripting is when you just literally journal the entire scene in your head, how you see it in your head, journal it exactly that way. So you write about how amazing it was for you to get your promotion, for you to start dating the guy you want, for the luckiest thing ever to happen to you. That is when you visualize through scripting. So those are a few different ways that you can do that. The easiest one, and the one that most people are doing for lucky girl syndrome, is just affirmations by like saying I'm so lucky. And as Laura mentioned, you can take it to a quote-unquote delusional place by like saying to your friends, I am so lucky. Saying to your parents, I'm just lucky, everything works out for me. And I don't think, because sometimes when you're manifesting, if you were to say to, if I were to turn around to Josh and be like, I have $30 million, he would be like, you're smoking crack, you do not have $30 million, what are you talking about? And then I'd look a little rough, like he would probably question my sanity. But if I say to him, I'm the luckiest person alive, he's not gonna probably question my sanity. He's just gonna be like, okay, Grace is on one. So I think that that's one of those times, like one of those affirmations that it's fine to say to people. They're not gonna look at you like you're crazy. So that was one concern I have when it comes to saying affirmations to people. Like, I'm so scared they're gonna be like, what? Like, she's lying. But it's like, no, you're not. Like, you are the luckiest person alive. And it's not something so bizarre that people are gonna be like, okay. So another one that I mentioned that is pretty simple is just adopt a more positive mindset. Like I mentioned, it's okay to have feelings. It's okay to be negative. I want you to process your emotions, but in general, try to have a more positive outlook on life. And that is gonna help you. When you look through a positive point of view, you are, like I mentioned, gonna see more positive things because of that RAS that we talked about. So in general, it's nice to have a more positive mindset. And then the last thing is act with confidence. When opportunities come your way, don't turn them down. If you are the luckiest person alive and you want a promotion at work, if you see an opportunity to talk to someone about a promotion, walk right up to them and talk to them and tell them why you are qualified for that job. I mean, it's really that simple. Just like a lot of people lack that confidence and it shows. If you don't seize opportunities, then, you know, something could be right in front of you that's amazing, and if you're too shy or too embarrassed or you don't want to take it, then it's going to pass you right on by and go to the next person who is confident and ready to go. So it's really that simple when it comes to having confidence. It's really hard to build up that self-esteem, and it starts with you for sure and knowing your worth, but it's something I really encourage you to work on because it can change your life for the better. All right, guys, that is all the notes I have on this. Like I mentioned, I'm gonna put all the resources down below. There are some that I definitely forgot to mention, like the definition of toxic positivity. I have a resource for that, and then I think everything else I mentioned. But I really encourage you to read those articles, look at everything for yourself, and let me know what your thought on your singular thought. No, let me know what your thoughts on lucky girl syndrome are. Are you gonna join with me and be, you know, do a little experiment and see how this goes? Because I would love for you to join me. It's so fun. Like, let's do it together. Okay, I need to shut up. I'm so sorry. Okay. On that note, thank you so much for watching. Like I mentioned, if you want to join the community of girlies, all we're going to become the best version of ourselves. Don't forget to subscribe, follow, collect, whatever platform you're on, what they call it on there. I would love for you to join us. If you're on YouTube or a platform you can comment, go ahead and let me know your thoughts down below. Leave a like. It would really help me out. And lastly, if you would not mind to leave a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I know most of you are on Apple Podcasts. I can see the analytics. Hey girl. and it would mean the absolute world to me if you either tap 5 stars or however many stars you feel this podcast deserves, and or wrote a review. You don't have to write a review, but if you did, I would love you forever. Even if you tap the stars, I would love you forever. It helps out my podcast more than you know. It helps us bring more girlies into the community, and it's just such a good time. I want to hang out with you guys all day, every day, because I thoroughly enjoy it. Like I mentioned, don't forget to follow me on Instagram and TikTok at thatgirlthepod. I try to post all the time. If I don't post like an actual post, I post a story on Instagram almost every day, and like I mentioned, it's a good time. Who wouldn't want to do that or join that or be a part of that? I can't, words are so hard. Oh my god. Okay, I'm gonna go feed my bunnies, edit this, publish it, and probably go crochet. I don't know. I don't really know what I'm doing with my life, but I think that's it. I love you guys so, so much. If you're watching this on Wednesday night, I hope you have a great night. If you're watching this on any other day, I hope you have a great morning, afternoon, or night, and I'll see you in my next podcast episode. Bye guys. Love you.